Hello, everybody. You're very welcome to today's webinar on the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform. We'll give people a minute to join before I introduce our host and our guests. And while we're waiting, I'll just introduce myself and a little bit about the platform. So my name is Kieran Farrell. I'm based here in Dublin, Ireland, and I look after the growth and operations for the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform. The platform itself is a trusted network of nature-based enterprises and NBS professionals from around the world. We're now closing in on 1,200 members and over 250 nature-based enterprises. We have a total of 11 different communities of practice on the platform at the moment, spanning different areas of nature-based solutions from forestry to water management, tourism, and green buildings. And each community is led by an ambassador who is either a business leader or a nature-based enterprise team member of who is practicing in their sector. And we work together with those ambassadors to grow the communities and help scale the supply of nature-based solutions to meet that ongoing demand. Further to that, we do have a marketplace where nature-based enterprises can list their services, and we'd encourage any nature-based enterprises present today to please do so. Finally then, today's webinar is organized by Nadina Gao. Nadina is our ambassador for the Smart Tech community on the platform, and she has invited along Gabor Goertz of Greehill and Josh Behounek of Davey Resource Group. And we're very eager to hear what they have to say. So without further ado, I'll be quiet and hand over to Nadina.
Brilliant. Thank you, Kieran. And thank you so much to all of you that have joined us today. It's so great to see such a big live crowd. We've got quite the agenda for you today, so we are just going to dive right in. As Kieran said, my name's Nadina, and I wear many different hats, but the thing that connects them all is this intersection that I'm so passionate about, which is nature, people, and technology, and how we can make that all work in our burgeoning urban development, both today and in the future. And I really dedicated my career to bridging those three worlds together through a variety of different media, including my podcast, the Internet of Nature podcast. And in addition to that, I also am the Smart Tech ambassador for the Connecting Nature Enterprise platform, which I'm thrilled because it really connects a bunch of like-minded individuals, many of which we have here today with us live on the call. So thank you again for joining us. Just a small note of housekeeping, and that is we have the opportunity after Gabor and Josh have spoken to do a live Q&A with them here. So please, throughout the webinar, enter your questions that you might have as they come up into the Q&A box. And we will go through those towards the end of the webinar. So please, pop them in there as they come up, and we will try to address them towards the end of the webinar. And we've got a little bit of a unique format here today, and that is an interview style format. So instead of Josh and Gabor explaining their story through slides, we'll be doing this interview style. So much like the podcast, it'll be me asking them questions, and that'll give them the opportunity to explain everything there is to know about Smart Tree Inventories. And on that note, that is exactly what we're exploring today. We're diving into this fascinating topic, which I think really is broadly speaking about the future of urban tree care. And we really want to uncover the magic that's happening between both Davey Resource Group and Greehill, and showing how this technology is really shaking up the future and the way that we care for urban trees. So the goals of this webinar are simple. We want to really set the stage of what is going on with tree care in this day and age, where we think it's going, and how this specific technology might help us do that. How is it going to help us save costs, save resources, and mostly empower the arborists on the ground that are using this data for the future management of our urban forests. So without further ado, let me introduce our two speakers today. First up, we've got Josh Behounek. It's an absolute pleasure to have him. Josh, like me, wears multiple different hats. His main title is the Business Development Manager at Davey Resource Group, but he likes to call himself a theoretical arborist. He works very closely and has been really, I would say, at the forefront of trying to figure out which technologies are going to be most useful to urban forestry and arboriculture. He was a featured guest on my podcast back in season 3 on episode 4. For those of you that can't get enough of Josh, you can find another interview with him there. Beyond his speaking, Josh's career as an ISA certified arborist spans a wide range of expertise, from tree inventories to invasive species management, and it's really earned him the reputation as a trusted advisor. And I personally find a lot of inspiration in his often quoted wisdom, which is one of my favorite quotes, one that I featured actually in my upcoming book, which is technology won't replace arborists, but arborists who embrace technology will likely replace arborists who don't. So that gives you a little bit of a sneak peek into what Josh's philosophy is behind all of this. And then we've got Gabor Goertz, and it's a warm welcome to have Gabor here today. He is the co-founder and CEO of Greehill. And Gabor is a true innovator in the field of predictive urban tree maintenance. And I'm going to let him explain later what exactly he means by that. And Greehill has really developed a remarkable technology, starting in Singapore, moving over to Europe, and now with this partnership with Davey Resource Group, moving over into the States. And really, I mean, I think they're going for world domination here with the Smart Tree Inventories. And I think what really drives Gabor, if I make me speak for him, is that he's really on a mission to create healthier and safer cities through the future of urban tree care. And I think this remarkable, two brilliant minds coming together to drive this new technology is a real pleasure, and it's great to have them both today. So thank you very much, Josh and Gabor, for joining us. And so to kick things off, to give you a little bit of a heads up about what's to come, I'm going to interview Josh for the next 10 or 15 or so minutes. Then we'll switch over to Gabor, and then we will go into our Q&A and wrap up for today. So without further ado, Josh, let's kick things off by having you share the objectives of the webinar, introducing the Davey Resource Group, and explain why it's vital for our audience to understand the importance of urban tree care.
Well, thanks for having me. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you great.
Great. Yeah, well, thanks. It is great to see these participant lists here from all over the world. Man, what an exciting time to be in urban forestry and to be in technology and that intersection where we all try to help people. It's exciting. So, so I'm Josh with the Resource Group. We are what I like to call the consulting arm of the Davey Tree Expert Company. We have offices throughout all of North America, do all sorts of environmental consulting from urban forestry, but also on the wetland side, invasive species, all sorts of restoration types of things. So really trying to help the environment be better. When I think about what we're trying to accomplish here today, I think it's somewhere we're all trying to accomplish about is to have the most accurate information available to make the best, the most informed decisions with what we have at the time to hopefully make the next generation of humans have a better planet than what we have right now. I think that's, generationally speaking, what we're always trying to do is make the world a better place for everybody. So that's what we're here for today, is to introduce this, what we're calling a Smart Tree Inventories, and how we think that, and how our clients have told us that it can help make their lives better and easier, and therefore help all of the urban forests.
Brilliant. And why would you say it's important to understand urban tree care? What is really at the heart of urban tree care?
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we think about urban tree care, it's a relatively young field of arboriculture. But as we've learned more about it, we understand all the benefits of trees and of urban nature. And as more and more civilizations move to an urbanized environment, the importance of that becomes even magnified even more. From all, lots of us know about the benefits of trees. And so the more that we can understand how to better manage those this environment, which is critical because if we think about trees, they didn't evolve to be in cities. You know, that it's not a natural place for them to be. Maybe you could argue humans haven't either. You know, so but getting those trees to perform well requires knowledge and be able to share that so that we can do the best we can.
And what would you say are the main pain points that urban tree care professionals are dealing with on a day-to-day basis when it comes to managing city trees?
Main pain points, yeah. So I think when you think about like a urban forester or city forester or some kind of tree officer, somebody that's managing a large population of trees, you know, not just a homeowner, right? Like somebody that's managing thousands and thousands of trees. They have to make decisions on a system-wide level, and they have to use the information or the data that they have to make those decisions. They can't inspect every tree before they make the decision. So one of the biggest challenges I think they have is not having accurate data, not having accurate information, not being able to tell their story to the people, whether that's the residents or their bosses that need to help define budgets. So yeah, just having that accurate information, accurate data, to make those informed decisions.
That's how I like to think it often as well. Is like how can you possibly expect to be making decisions on a system-wide level if you're missing just if you're missing just even basic information on how many trees you have, where they are, what kind they are, their condition, just this basic information that you need to understand what it is you're even dealing with. And I think that would be a big surprise to many to know that there are many cities around the world, big cities, it would surprise you that are actually either lacking a tree inventory at all or might have one, but it hasn't been updated in over a decade. So maybe that's a perfect kind of jumping off point. Can you kind of give us a little bit of a lowdown on what is kind of the old-fashioned digital tree inventory and what is a smart tree inventory?
Yeah, so you know, it's been kind of fun as we've been diving into this smart tree inventory, and you know what might seem like a relatively new thing, you know, actually been working on it for a long time. You know, it's lots of work has gone on behind the scenes for years. But in a lot of respects, it's very similar to a traditional inventory. It's just a little bit of the collection methodology is different. So, and it's a natural progression if we think about the way that tree inventories have evolved. You know, they started originally with just like a pen and paper, you know, and then as computers got invented, they became computerized. And as GIS became available and that became invented, if you think about that, then we started mapping our trees. So it's a natural evolution that we would bring technology with our trees. So using ground-based LiDAR and high-resolution photos, we're able to, you know, collect a lot of the same information that we would collect with a arborist, but at a faster rate and more accurately. You know, so some of the big differences we're trying to do here is to remove a lot of the subjectivity that happens in an assessment of a tree, you know, and to get more accurate information, which includes like simple things like measuring the size of a tree. It's amazing how inaccurate that can be between methodologies or arborists. So yeah, so increasing the reliability, you know, the data acquisition part, the speed of the collection, and removing the subjectivity to it is some of the key differences. But a lot of the attributes, you know, like we would think about species, size, you know, maintenance, like that's all still the same. Like we're still trying to get the same type of information to make the same decisions, just better.
And why should we care about the subjectivity of data collection? Why does that matter?
Yeah, that's a good one. You know, it's something as arborists we pride ourselves on is our ability to assess a tree. You know, and it's interesting. I've done a lot of these kind of thought experiments with internal staff as well as external conferences and whatnot, and asking people the condition of a tree. And it's amazing the variedness of, you could have the same tree and some people would say poor, fair, good, and everybody's right. Like there's no right, like everybody's right because in their opinion, off of what they know about the tree, they, make their decision of what they think the condition of the tree is. But now if you're making a recommendation on what you should do with that, then that condition assessment matters, because if you're going to say, I'm going to remove all my poor condition trees and you call a tree a poor, then it gets removed or whatever, right? So
it has consequences.
It has consequences, yeah. And every time you introduce a new arborist to an inventory, you inherently have subjectivity more. So when you start scaling up to get more projects done or to get it done faster, you inherently have more subjectivity, which then brings in more quality control and quality assurance issues. So yeah, it's an issue.
And I mean, we touched upon it briefly there when you said when you're bringing in a new arborist, when you're having to do this quality control. I can imagine, when you go in and you do your pitch to a group of arborists at a municipality or at a region or on a campus even, and you do the pitch for the Smart Tree Inventory. I imagine at times you've gotten pushback, arborists that might say, there's no piece of technology that can do this as good as I can in the fields. Can you give us an example of perhaps an arborist that may have been very, let's say, critical or unsure of the technology at first that has then learned to adopt it, and why?
Yeah, I think that there's several good examples, but I'll just give one from last week. Okay, so a lot of us were at the World Forum last week in DC, World Forum of Urban Forests, and it was a great conference, tons of information, over 1,200 arborists, urban foresters from around the world, 60 different countries represented. Went for a lunch, we're talking about this, and we went for lunch. I'm walking down the streets of Washington, DC, and people are asking me questions about Smart Tree Inventory, like, hey, can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? What about this? And, so one of the common questions is like, can I do species identification? And it's like, yeah, I can do that. Can it do as well as an arborist? Well, I don't know. How good is an arborist? So there's 6 of us walking down the street looking at a typical street tree, and 4 of the people that are certified arborists, been in the field forever, could not identify that tree. And we had to bring out our app to take a picture and identify it. And the app was right, and 2 of the arborists knew it already. So it's like even things like species identification, we think we're really good at it, and then we get stumped, right? And we're really prideful of that we know all these things and we get stumped. So when you start stopping and think about of course there's going to be things with technology that's going to stump it. The difference is the way that it learns and the scalability of how it can learn is way faster and way more precise than our traditional kind of way of teaching arborists how to do it. So, but then there's other examples of collecting data from that's different. So yeah. Is that a good enough example for you?
No, that's great, and it actually leads me to my next question, which was how customizable and how scalable is this technology? I mean, just something like obviously the different species that grow in cities around the world. How do you go about, without getting into the technical aspects of it, because that's what we have Gabor for here, which we'll get to in a minute, but just in general terms, how scalable and customizable is this technology?
Well, it's no secret, and internally with our company that's one of the main reasons I've been pursuing this for over 7 years now, is the scalability of it. And when I'm talking about scalability, it's like doing more of them faster, right? And across the country and across the world, because there's a staff shortage, right? There's an employee shortage. There's a person shortage in our field. So if we can scale that and do that, and it's a very time intensive thing to do a traditional inventory. You have to walk up to every single tree. You have to do that. And it's interesting that when we do a traditional inventory, we spend about 80% of our time actually entering information, not even associated with the tree, just looking at address stuff and the surrounding infrastructure around it. Very little of our time is looking at the tree and making an assessment on the tree. most of it is the data capturing, the walking, the, looking at utilities, like all that. So if we can speed all that up and then deploy arborists to specific trees that need a time and attention of a real assessment and a real arborist, and spend longer at that's something that we're real excited about, right? Like this classic story I say is like, do you really need a certified arborist inspecting that 3-inch red maple that was just planted 2 years ago? Or would you rather have them spend longer time at a 30-inch declining elm tree that's got potentially Dutch elm disease, something like that. Like when you think about like, oh, that makes sense. That's where we need to deploy our expertise. The other thing I'll say that, what we're really excited about is, and Gabor will talk about this later, is because of the way that we're collecting the data with point clouds, if after we collect all the data and you decide, oh, we would like to have this analysis or this information, we can extract that and we can run that and add that to the population of our assessment.
Right.
But if you call us even 2 days later after we've passed a tree and you're like, hey, you know what, we would like corridor clearance. We'd like to know if we're impacting trees, like and cars. Like, oh, okay, great, we can add it from this point on, but we can't go retroactively and get that, So it allows for a lot of more customization in that regard,
Right.
Of course, there's limitations to what it can and can't do, just like there's limitations to human capturing data that can and can't do.
Yeah, I love the idea of being able to scale this across the city, and then indeed based on that initial smart tree inventory, being able to send, the best of the best specialized arborists to areas that the smart tree inventory has identified as needing an extra look, or perhaps in trees in bad condition that need, that extra human look, instead of indeed sending that same specialized arborist that has limited time and limited resources behind him or her to individual tree. Especially if we're talking in cities, that have upwards of millions of trees on public lands. That is just no wonder we're dealing with so much outdated data, because how are you possibly going to do that for all those different trees? On that note, and we love to see also, I think Karen mentioned it in the group here, the geographical spread that we've got just in the 76 participants that we've got here in this webinar alone. Can you speak, Josh, a little bit to the current state of urban trees and smart technology adoption in the United States versus Europe?
Yeah, that's interesting, and it's kind of an interesting moment right now. I don't know if it's true or not, Medina, but I feel like when COVID happened and everybody went home and everybody started doing that, since that we've emerged, like all this technology has come on us in lots of different ways, right? Like from the way that we're doing this webinar, but in the urban forestry space, there's lots of companies now that are creating sensors that have never seen a tree before, but they're like, ooh, I could adapt this from LiDAR to drones and all sorts of things.
And you've seen it all, because you've told me you get multiple pitches on a weekly basis of all these new technologies that are coming out for trees.
Yeah, we get pitched. I mean, we're a pretty big, good-sized tree care company, so we get pitched from all different angles all the time. Yeah, for sure. And a lot of it's really exciting and promising, and I can see we'll definitely have an impact. And who knows how some of it'll go, right? But when I think about the difference between like Europe and the United States, and when I think about some of our partners we work with in Europe and versus the United States, I think the key trend difference is I think Europe has a longer history of taking care of trees, of course. And you guys, and they've gone through some different land use changes compared to the United States. One of the key differences is I think on an individual tree level, on an arboriculture level, Europe has been more advanced and takes pride in their individual tree care of the tree, right? And usually that looks like a lot more frequent pruning, a lot more cabling and bracing, a lot more interest in protecting that tree. Versus here in the States, we're probably quicker. Maybe it's because of risk adverse, but we're probably quicker to remove a tree or do one pruning on it. Like we don't really do a lot of individual tree care at like a city level. Lots of homeowners do, but lots of at a city level, they don't really do that. It's just kind of pruning or removal. I will say that we do probably here would adapt more. Maybe it's because we're more comfortable with chemicals or whatever, but we will adapt more of like injections, inoculations, and we will have cities that will use herbicides or pesticides, insecticides to manage trees, which I think is not as common in Europe. Then I would say that, but one of the flip sides is I do think when it comes to managing a population of trees, managing a system of trees, managing tens and thousands of canopy goals and involving homeowners and making those decisions. The U.S. has been doing that for a longer time, and that's why we have things like iTree that have been created and are probably further along than Europe is in that regard. And I think some of our stuff around management planning, what we call master plans, and then we're seeing Europe now start to do more of those, setting canopy goals and creating some we saw Birmingham, UK came up with urban forest master plan, some of those exciting, things that have come over the pond the other way. So we're learning more about things like the biomechanics of trees and some of that individual research, and how we can use that safety factor stuff. And, we're sharing the urban forest management piece. I don't know if you agree with that or not. You see both?
No, I think in general, I think in very general terms, saying that Europe has more of the focus on arboriculture and the States, including, and North America with Canada, focusing more on urban forestry. I think that's a fair generalization. Absolutely. And on that note, is there any advice that you would give a European tree care company looking to expand and meet the growing demand? Any practical tips that you would give them?
Yeah, so if I was a kind of what I would think of as a traditional tree care company, a tree care company in Europe, where you've been focused on the trees, a lot of those principles still apply to urban forestry. But I would encourage you, there's a saying here, I'm sure it's applicable there, that if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? So if your only tool is pruning or removing trees, then that's really all you think you can do. So getting good partners or investing in, some technology, whether that's, mapping stuff. There's so much information available with satellites now, so much of that is available, and it can offer you the ability to help a city or an estate or a commercial property, manage their trees on a different level. That I think everybody now is starving for planning and starving for making the best decision they can. So our expertise on knowing when to remove trees, how to treat trees, and then applying it on a system level there's lots of value in that. So just kind of expanding that mindset a little bit more.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Josh, to wrap us up for your little portion here today, what is one key message that you hope the audience takes away from this webinar regarding smart tree inventories?
Well, I'm glad you said one of my quotes there that I like about replacing arborists. So don't be afraid that somehow this is going to make you less valuable. There's lots of examples of technology disrupting fields and new services created, and it only makes people more valuable. But I would say the key message or the key thing is, we've been preaching for a long time to plant the right tree in the right place, and now it's really time to be thinking about our management of that. So we have this saying about make the right decision at the right time on the right tree. So that would probably be my main take home, is make the right decision, the right time on the right tree.
With the right data.
Which will inform that decision, right?
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you, Josh. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this with us. And we will come back to you because I already see some questions coming in. And then we will switch gears over to Gabor for now. And just a note to all of the participants, great to see the chat lighting up. We love to see it, but also make sure that you drop your questions in the Q&A box as they come up. Any questions that you might have on what Josh has just said, or any questions as they come up for Gabor's portion up next. So thank you in advance for that. Gabor, great to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this and sharing more about your insights. I want to kick us off with the question that obviously Josh did a great job kind of setting the scene, and especially from his perspective at the Davey Resource Group. But what inspired this collaboration between Davey Resource Group and greehill? Because it's not one that you see every day. I think it's a pretty unique partnership. So what inspired that collaboration?
Yes, hello, Nadina. Thank you for having me here. So let me maybe start how greehill started. We started back in 2017 with a research project in Singapore, which has been initiated by NParks. NParks manages is the agency which measures 3 million trees in Singapore, and they aimed at increasing the safety of their citizens and to reduce maintenance costs. So based on this research, basically, we have developed a product which was launched in 2021, which we then marketed first in Asia Pacific and in Europe. And then when we basically decided to enter the US market, our business model is based that we always work with a local greenery partner. So we bring the technology, but we provide a solution to our clients in combination with our local partner who has the local know-how about the urban forests, about the specificities of the tree care in that specific country. So when we decided to enter the North American market, Davey, as a market leader for tree inventories and tree care in the US, was a natural choice for us as a partner.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know everyone here, the participants, while Josh has done a great job setting the scene, are probably chomping at the bit to understand a little bit more what exactly is a smart tree inventory and what exactly does greehill do as a company. What is this technology that we're talking about? So without further ado, I know you have a video that is going to tell us in more detail exactly what the technology is and its specific applications in urban tree care. So Kieran, I would say press play.
Okay, bear with me 1 second, folks. Pull up the video.
Oh, no sound, Kieran. I think it's muted.
No
The sound will come in a second.
Sorry, folks. We'll go back to the start.
Beautiful. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you very much, Kieran, for playing that.
No problem. I'll just stop the screen share here now.
Great. We're back. That went very smoothly. I know we were worried about that, but that went very well. Thank you, Kieran. So Gabor, we saw a little bit of just a brief introduction, what greehill does and some of the technology that's involved, but maybe for some of the participants that aren't as familiar with things like AI, laser scanning, 4D, digital twins, all these kind of buzzwords that we've been hearing a lot about lately. Can you offer just a kind of a brief overview of what those technologies are and how they play a role in the Smart Tree Inventory?
Yes, with pleasure. So basically, we have a 5-step process to create a smart tree inventory. As you have seen in the video, in the first step, we capture data. So we capture data with LiDAR, so with laser scanning, and with very high resolution cameras. And we have something like a Google car where we drive through the city, and basically with LiDAR, with laser scanning, we create a so-called point cloud. So this is basically the outcome of the laser scanner. It's a copy of the environment of your city. And then in the second step, we use AI, so artificial intelligence, to extract information from the pictures and from the point cloud taken. So we have developed a machine learning engine which finds each tree in your city and creates a 4D digital twin of this tree. So a digital twin is a centimeter accurate copy of your tree. And why 4D? Because 3D, it's a copy in space, so in 3 dimensions. And because we monitor every second year usually, basically we track also changes of the trees over time. So, and because the way we assess trees is objective, then we can also compare once we have rescanned and reassessed the tree, we can compare each tree with the status 2 years before. And so we see how a tree develops over time. And that's why we call it 4D. It's a 4th dimension. So that's why we use mainly machine learning. So once we have then the digital twin of each tree, we assess each tree. So we analyze each tree. As Josh already mentioned, we use the position. Of course, we extract the position of each tree. We extract the species, metrical information like the DBH, the tree height, canopy size, leaning factor, first bifurcation, but also we give indications about the vitality and the condition, and also the safety factor. The safety factor is a biomechanical approach which basically helps you to identify trees which are endangered to break at a given wind speed. So we can simulate at which wind speed a certain tree will break. So all this information basically is then automatically assessed, and we by that we identify outliers in the 4th step. So the outliers are those trees which need special attention from an arborist. So as you probably know, 90% of the trees, they don't need special attention, but especially young trees and old trees, or trees which are infected by cavities, decays, or other illnesses, they need special attention from an arborist. So we identify all those trees automatically and provide this list to the arborist. So it's very important. We are not replacing any arborists. We are supporting arborists in their daily work, and we provide them the information that they can better prioritize their work and basically better use the resources which are available.
You're basically honing their focus so that they can work as efficiently as possible and use their often limited resources as efficiently as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, this sounds like, and I know is, an absolute game changer for one, being able to hone in an arborist's limited time and resources, but 2, being able to have a time series temporal data that's objective and that you can trust. Because I know cities have been trying, in general, cities try to do a digital tree inventory the old-fashioned way every 5, if they're lucky, typically every 10 years or so. And then one, of course, 10 years is a decade, is a long time compared to the 2-3 years we're discussing here. But then, as to Josh's earlier point, that subjectivity has a massive, massive role on, can we actually trust the changes that we're seeing? Did that change actually occur? Or was there just a hiccup in the data collection or the data analysis or data quality control after the fact? So I think that in itself is just, I want to highlight that for the audience, because that is not to be underestimated, just how valuable this type of technology is to be able to see that time series of data. Specifically, I think when it comes to one of the questions I'm hearing so much is, if we green this neighborhood, if we plant X amount of trees, what impact is that going to have in 10, 20, even maybe 5, 10, 20 years from now in terms of all these ecosystem services that we hope that these trees will provide us with? This is the first technology that I've seen that actually is going to provide you an objective means to be able to measure progress on those goals in a way that we haven't before. So all that to say, you've applied this technology starting in Singapore, in the Asia Pacific, in Europe, and in the US. I'm sure along the way, a lot of challenges and hiccups have happened. Can you discuss some of these challenges with us and how you were able to overcome them?
Yes, of course, with pleasure. So first of all, what we have learned that the aim of urban forest management and the priorities are very similar everywhere in the world. So first, everywhere, we try to reduce risk of tree failure and increase the safety of the citizens and the infrastructure. That this is usually the number one priority. Number two priority is what we see is that everywhere we try to reduce maintenance costs. And last but not least, as you mentioned, Adina, we try to increase the positive impact of trees on their environment, so the so-called the ecosystem services, and increase also the health of the trees over time. So these are basically the three priorities which we see are the same everywhere in the world. Where we see differences between Asia Pacific and mainly, for example, the US is in Asia Pacific, we are mainly focusing on trying to reduce the temperature in the city through the natural cooling effect of trees. Where in the US, we are very much focusing on maximizing the canopy coverage. So these are so basically the way we look at trees and the benefits of trees are different from region of the world to region of the world. But the priorities for urban forestry are the same. Now, the biggest challenge for us as a tech company is, of course, that the B2G. So our clients are usually municipalities and cities, and B2G has a long sales cycle. So sometimes it takes up to 2 years between the first contact with a client and that we start a project. And this is very similar everywhere in the world. So especially a young technology company needs to have a very solid financial background to overcome this period of time, and which we have thanks to our outstanding investors. So we have investors which share this same long-term vision that we want to help cities around the world to become greener and healthier. Like Singapore, like becoming a city in the garden is really a fantastic example. So we have the partners and the investors to help us to overcome this difficulty at the beginning with a long sales cycle and to be here today and also in the next coming years.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I think quite underestimated and something and almost a bit of a taboo that people have a hard time talking about, but that is the reality of having a technology company that is focused in this sector. There is a long lead time. So having investors that share that philosophy is absolutely crucial to making greehill a success. Gabor, could you name an example of a specific arborist or an urban forester that has used your technology and what has come of it?
Yes, with pleasure. So as mentioned, we have started 2017 in Singapore. Today, we have 48 projects in 11 countries around the world, in Singapore, but many projects also in Europe, in Austria, Germany, France, Italy, England. And now, since last year, we're extending our activities together with Davey to the US. Of course, our client with the most experience is NParks in Singapore. And basically, in the last year, so since they moved from a reactive tree management through Smart Tree Inventories to a proactive and active management of the safety and the health of trees, they were able to reduce the number of incidents with trees per year from 10,000 to 400. So, which is a significant decrease. 400 are still too much, so we're still continuing. But don't forget they have 3 million trees, so it's an extraordinary achievement. In addition to that, Singapore plans to plant another 1 million trees in the coming years. And we are preparing basically to manage these 4 million trees with the same amount of people that they usually hire to manage the 3 million trees they currently have. So basically, we aim at increasing the productivity of maintenance by up to 30%.
That's an incredible achievement. And I'm sure that numbers like that really help also in your pitches and being able to secure the next clients and the next municipalities after that. And I think it's also, it's an incredible achievement because those statistics alone show that the technology has a return on investment. And I think to Josh's earlier point, that's been, as Josh is, has all these different pitches coming in. I think that, and what I've seen within the Internet of Nature as well, is that there is a ton of incredible intention out there, and there's a ton of incredible technologies out there, but to be able to make that step from intention and technology to actually getting the return on investment and being able to show that to an investor and in a pitch and on paper, that is a big leap that a lot of companies, I think, have not yet been able to get to. So hopefully Greehill provides inspiration in that area as well. Gabor, just in the
if I may add
go
one
ahead.
point, So I think it's important to see that with smart tree inventories, basically, if you compare directly to traditional tree inventories, we collect more information. When we talk about return of investment, we collect more information per tree. We, as mentioned, the collect information is objective and with a higher accuracy. We are much, much faster than traditional tree inventories. For example, the study of Dentons with about 40,000 trees have been scanned within 2 weeks. And we are at lower cost than traditional tree inventories. So usually the cost for 2 scans. So for, let's say, we have a 4-year subscription model with 2 scans. So you get 2 full inventories is not more than 1 traditional tree inventory. So you have a direct return of investment. And then, of course, you have an indirect return of investment because you have up-to-date information, because you can plan your pruning ahead, so which will also then reduce further your maintenance costs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds like a quadruple win to me when you put it like that. Gabor, just in the interest of time, because I see a lot of questions coming in, I want to make sure we can get to our audience questions. What would be a personal reflection of your work? What drives the passion for what you do, and which accomplishment are you most proud of thus far?
So I'm a tech guy, and I was once asked, Gabor, are you a tree hugger? And for an investor, and I said no. But the more we deal with trees, the more we start to love trees. But what gives me most, and our team, and it's a teamwork, we're 80 people now, gives us the most energy is the reaction of the arborists. And let me give you an example from yesterday. Yesterday, we were in Lincoln at the Arbor Day Foundation. We presented smart tree inventories. And among others, there was Pete Smith. He's one of the leading arborists of the Arbor Day Foundation with more than 30 years of experience. And he literally said, for more than 20 years, I've been dreaming of such a solution. Now it's finally here. These are the moments. And when I see the sparkling in the eyes of arborists who say, yes, it will change my life. It may make our life much better and easier. That gives us a lot of energy. And we should not forgive that 50% of the world population are living in cities. So trees are essential for the quality of life today, and especially in the future of people living in cities. So this gives us a lot of energy, and it's the driving force behind our activities.
I believe it. Well, what a privilege to be able to offer that solution and be able to see that sparkle in someone's eye. I'm sure that's incredibly rewarding.
It is.
Okay, thank you so much, Gabor. That was brilliant. We've got a multitude of different questions coming in. So one of the first ones that caught my attention, and I am just going to dive right in for the interest of time, because we do have a hard stop at 11 or 5 if you're in Europe. There was a question from Jonathan, and he asks, and I think this, based on skimming quickly, is probably for Gabor, but feel free to address it, both of you. He says, with generative AI doing inventory faster than human arborists, where will municipalities find the funding for the technology? and the army of arborists to manage individual trees? So I do think this is an interesting question. Can you just briefly, just to broaden Jonathan's question a little bit, speak to the cost of doing a smart tree inventory versus the digital tree inventory?
Yes. So first of all, we're not using generative AI. We're using discriminative AI. It's a little technical detail, but what we see is that usually cities have a budget for traditional tree inventories. So as you mentioned, they do it every 5 years or every 10 years. Our business model is a subscription fee. So we move basically the costs from the capex to the opex, where you pay roughly $1 to $1.50 per tree per year. So basically we are in this budget of traditional tree inventories, but providing more information, more reliable information. So you don't need usually to get new budgets, you use existing budgets. Of course, what we see now in the US, the IRA fund is a great help. 1.5 billion US dollars are granted to the urban forests. And of course, this makes the adoption of smart tree inventories in the US, of course, much faster than in other parts of the world.
Yeah, and the IRA, for those who aren't familiar, that is the Inflation Reduction Act, that indeed it has allotted $1.5 billion investment to urban forestry, which I know for those of you that were at the World Forum for Urban Forests last week in Washington, D.C. is definitely creating a whole new level of buzz, because it's one thing to get excited about technology. There's another, if there's money behind it, that we can actually implement that technology. So that's really great to see. We've had an anonymous question here. Thank you for the inspiring thoughts. It makes me think on how do you manage to assess the tree safety factor? Is it similar to a tree risk assessment? How do you deal with the subjectivity of this kind of assessment? And how do you adapt the technology to different countries? So again, just to make that question a little bit more succinct, can a smart tree inventory offer information about tree risk assessments, about the safety of a tree?
Josh, you want to answer? Should I answer?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer it. I think it's important to understand that when you're doing a traditional tree risk assessment, that at this point still needs to be done by an arborist, because there is some subjectivity to it. It's the knowledge of the tree, it's the built environment around it. But there's limitations to that. There's limitations to a tree risk assessment, just like if we're being honest, there's limitations, right? And I would say that one of the biggest limitations is we know how a tree is going to fail, but we don't know when it's going to fail. So there's lots of examples of us driving around trees going, how is that thing still standing? I knew that was going to fail, and it's still standing. With things like safety factor, because we're able to measure more accurately a lot of things like the height of the tree, the canopy of the tree, the live crown ratio of a tree, the leaning angle of a tree, it's another way to look at risk. It doesn't replace a risk assessment. It's a different type of assessment, and it's important to put it in its own space. But you're able to use more predictive modeling, which is a strength of AI that we don't have in humans' ability to understand maybe when that tree might fail. So when you start combining that with a traditional risk assessment, Gabor and I are working, and other partners are working on trying to improve risk assessments through some of this accurate measurement of LiDAR, and looking at branch attachments and branch weighting and things. So that's future is really exciting. But maybe that answers the question, Nadina, in the sense there.
Yeah, and it sounds like there might even be something in the works in terms of an integration with tree sensors as well that might be able to offer a little bit more real-time information. Is that something that you've thought about in terms of a long-term vision to integrate perhaps different on-site tree sensors with greehill data?
Yes. So the short answer is that they're IoT items which can be attached to trees, which will, for example, monitor when the tree starts to move. Usually, research has shown that a tree starts to move 3 to 4 weeks slightly before it fails. So we are also in discussions with partners with IoT sensors to integrate that in this platform.
Brilliant. And another question that we got from Hugo, also talking about the long-term business perspective and the long-term vision. He says, when you are collecting the data that greehill is collecting about trees, it looks like you're collecting a whole host of other data as well. Of course, you're masking out and taking just the tree data, but he asks, is there a long-term vision when it comes to other services you want to offer based on perhaps this other data you're collecting?
Well, it's yes, and it's not long-term, it's very current. So you're absolutely right. We create a centimeter copy of each city. So trees is our focus, and it's the most complex asset to be extracted. But traffic signs and any other benches, any other non-movable assets, we can extract, and we started to extract already, like light poles and other features. And it will be provided also in form of a shape file to the clients.
Right, right. Another question that we're getting, and I'm rushing through now because I want to get, because there's some really great ones here. I've seen in the past LiDAR data, of course, be matched up and provide better input data for tools like iTree, or as anonymous attendee here put it, the U4 modeling as well, which is about the different tree benefits and ecosystem services forecasting. Is that something that you've done with greehill data as well?
Josh, yeah, yes. So long story short, yes. What we do is we the ecosystem service is driven by the leaf area index mainly and the biomass. And usually in iTree, the leaf area index is assessed by a so-called allometric approach. So you take the species, you take the DBH, and then you look in a lookup table about the leaf area index. We measure the leaf area index at each individual tree. So we distinguish between leaves and branches. We measure the leaf area index, and we are working on an iTree++, so an improved version of iTree, providing more precise information about each tree.
Yeah, brilliant. And hopefully scaling that up to show also growth models. So knowing that if you plant these 5 trees here right now, what are the ecosystem services going to look like in 10, 15, 20 years from now? I think that, again, to come back to my earlier point, I think that is kind of an understated game changer when it comes to this kind of data. That makes it especially exciting. Second to last question, a simple one, but I think an important one. Has any large US city implemented this technology, and which large cities in Europe has? Okay, so general question, where has greehill been implemented both in the US and in Europe?
Josh, you want to answer for the US?
So in the US, we have a couple cities that we're really close to signing contracts on. We have verbal awards and just nailing down a couple scopes. And yeah, I don't want to say the exact city yet, because they might not want
yet. We'll come back later. How about Europe, Gabor?
Yeah, so one city we can mention is Denton's in the US, where we have scanned, and we have we are about to provide, and Pittsburgh, and in Europe, we have smaller cities from 10,000 trees like Leeuwen up to larger cities in the UK. In France, we have so Berlin, for example, is one of our clients. Lyon. So the point is that what you have to see, that large cities are usually divided into smaller entities. So also in Berlin, we started with one district, and then we extend to other districts in these cities.
That's great, and it's yes, Josh.
Yeah, I'll say one of the reasons we haven't scanned and we did Pittsburgh and we've done Denton here. One of the reasons we haven't scanned a big city in the States yet is because we just started doing this really in the States in like June, July. So we've we're
still on we're on the press tour.
Well, we could have done it, but the leaves started falling off, and we want leaf area index. So we could have been doing a couple other bigger cities by now, but we're just waiting until the leaves come back on in the spring. So and our window next year is getting more and more booked. So it'll be next year will be a lot of driving and a lot of extracting during those leaves on. So,
and a quick one-sentence answer to a great question by Natalie Bayfield, which is, do you see a use for this technology, not just for tree maintenance, but for education and community engagement, which I love. Thank you, Natalie, for that question.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that, you know, the short story is that when you have a digital twin of your urban forest, it's viewable from your monitor, your laptop, and you can zoom in and out and you can turn on photos. There's all sorts of educational opportunities with that. And then
With
when you start,
augmented reality applications, we got augmented reality, which will basically, you look at the tree and it project all the ecosystem services, all the benefits, all the information about the tree directly on your smartphone. So there are a lot of applications which we will help to create an awareness in the population for trees and the importance of trees. Yes.
Brilliant. Like an open air museum in the future. I would love to see that. Kieran, I'm going to pass the reins back to you to wrap us up. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and especially Gabor and Josh. Thank you for taking the time and telling us everything you know about Smart Tree Inventories. I wish you all of the best and hope that many, many municipalities sign up for this, because it sounds like a win-win-win-win-win to me. So thank you.
Thank you very much for having us here.
Kieran, over to you for any last points.
Thanks, Nadina, and thanks to Gabor and Josh, as well as all our attendees. I have very little else to add other than echoing some of the comments in the chat. It's a super interesting webinar, and we wish you all the success as you go forward with your project and your partnership.
Brilliant.
A little message just to our attendees. We have another number of upcoming webinars over the coming weeks and months. If you'd like to go on to the events section of the platform, we have one coming up on regenerative agriculture later next week. And then following that in December, Nadina is back with another Smart Tech webinar discussing the Singapore biodiversity accounting metric with Ash Welch, to those who are familiar with him.
A lot of Singapore inspiration these months.
There is. But that's it, guys. If there's anybody on there who would like to showcase some of their own work or communicate some of the projects that they're doing in the nature-based solutions section, drop me a message through the platform. And other than that, we'll upload this recording onto our YouTube channel and on the platform in the coming days.
Brilliant.
That's it.
Thank you, Kieran. Thank you, Gabor. Thank you, Josh. And we'll see you all at the next webinar.
Thanks, guys. Cheers now. Bye-bye.